mind into the subject. So remember what we did yesterday, we started with the problem, we talked about the problems, and so today, and we discussed Nusi's, we talk about the problem in general and Nusi's approach to the problem. So today we're going to talk about the solution. So yes, that is, let's say there's a disease, we identify, we diagnose, but what is our prescription for that? Particularly using Nusian concepts. So that's really our objective. So let's start with a question. Which one that you think we are the most ignorant of? Are we the most ignorant of the self, of the people, of the animals and plants, of atoms? Yes. Self. Yes, we can make a round table to see how everyone thinks. We can start with you, right?
I think the little pie charts are trying to get us to say a certain thing.
Huh? Which one?
Those little charts at the top, they're making it seem like the self being those little yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the chart gives you some clue to your thing.
Potentially a clue, or potentially just throwing us off to something that you'll correct. But
it was really interesting.
Is it a blunt? No, they're double blunt, or triple blunt.
I'd say.
I mean, I'd say we're ignorant of potentially all of them.
But which one is most?
Oh, that's a question.
Yeah, exactly.
As in we as in humankind or me?
You as a person.
Me as
Yeah, you as a person.
Okay.
And I don't know whether you as a person will be different than we as a human as well, by the way. See, that's as a wake-up question, right? Wake you up from the sleep and make you to think, right? That's the whole.
But it depends on how we're defining. Like, if we're defining people by a bunch of selves, then
people means that by other people, not yourself.
okay.
So the question is knowledge of the self versus knowledge of knowledge of other people.
Let's go for the self.
You go for self. Okay. Yes.
Say atoms.
Huh? Atoms? Okay. Why? Small,
Study the
small secret universe, huh?
I'm not engineer. So.
Okay. So he thinks that in this case, that atoms is still a big mystery. We don't really know that much.
When you say we, I'm going to speak on myself.
Yeah, I mean, things about the humanity. And in this case, when you talk about atoms, well, you might not be really expert on that one. I think that you can think about humanity.
Yeah, I'd still say atoms.
You said atoms.
Because I think most of the world, they don't think about atoms too much.
Okay. And they don't know about it. But again, is it that the knowledge is out there, but just we don't know? Or is it that the knowledge is not out there? We have not discovered what is there?
It could be a bit of both, but with the rest, like it's part of your everyday life. So the self is like personal experience. Everyone engages with people, everyone sees animals and plants.
So then if I reverse the question, what would be your answer? Which one you think you know most?
Which one I know about the most? I'd say the self.
Wow, interesting.
That's good.
Very good, very good. That we need to really have from you, inshallah, to tell us to know about the self as well. Yes, Evan?
Well, Regis, I think we know with B is my final answer.
So the people are mystery to you?
Yes.
Yeah, why?
Well, Charles Dickens said, my fellow man is a book on which I cannot have claimed to read more than a page or two before it snaps closed in front of me. That there's depth to others that we don't see down.
But do you think it could be because we don't really know ourselves well, therefore we cannot know others? Because it's really interesting. Immanuel Kant says, he says that human is very, strange species as soon as they see they are being observed, they act differently. Therefore, you will never know their true nature, he says. But I will say Mursi will have different idea on that. So, I will agree that we're ignorant of other people as well, but I'm not sure whether that's because of our ignorance of the self or whether it's really of ignorance of others.
I think there's a profound depth in each human being.
Mm-hmm.
And at least, I know a little bit more of my depth than of others.
Okay. Interesting.
Because the whole world is reflected to each human.
But do you think that every single human being have a completely different life journey, life experience? Or do you think the human experience is quite similar in terms of general human experience of, let's say, pain, pleasure, hope, and fear, or whatever that you have? You think that it's just the event might be different, but the content is same, the underlying experience is same, or do you think that that's really every human is completely different?
I think as a human being, we have common kinds of human experience, but as persons, we are unique.
Personally, okay. So if that's common kind of human experience, then don't you think that if we truly understand our experience, then we might be able to understand others as well? In a way that empathy that works well to really to know that.
Yeah, but people are other selves as well, and so there's
more than what you have. So it means that you cannot.
Right. I think however we know the self, we will know people still less. I'm not saying the self is easy.
Interesting. Yes.
Yes, I have already.
Oh, you already said, yeah. Yours was the self, right?
Yes.
Well, why was the self?
Because I have read that man arafa nafsan faqad arafa was still in it.
So why?
But
how do you know that's true? Just because you read it, that doesn't mean it has to be true, right?
Because that's why I always try to understand myself, because people, the other people, they are different, but I can understand myself. So even till today, I cannot find what universe I have inside myself. So this a lot of time changes, experiencing feelings, ambitions, wishes, and all these things I have inside myself, and I am not even to reach some conclusion. What am I? So this is what I tell.
So you're saying that your own personal experience somehow confirmed that the self is really complicated and mystery. Yes. Right.
I'm not sure, because I thought the way I looked at it is, I think we're probably very ignorant of what we don't need to know, but I feel like we have access to resources that give us all the information that we do need to know about the self, the people, animals, plants, atoms, the purpose for which each of these serve, and also their nature as well. So I don't know if there's an option E, then I'll probably say
What would be option E? All?
not all and none at the same time.
All or none.
Because I feel like we do know about the self as much as we need to know to fulfill our purpose, as well as of people, as well as of animals and plants, and as well as of atoms. Actually, I probably agree with Shaq on this point. We don't really know much about atoms in that sense, that very detail, because most things I've talked about is something that is a collection, like animals, plants, people. So,
well, that's good. I think that means you're supposed to get. So I remember once they suggest to have a class in the college called Ignorance 101, which means that they say that the very first things that we have to really start with to understand our ignorance, to appreciate and to pursue knowledge. So in your case, if you think we're not ignorant of that, I think then that will basically in a way that not leave the room for you perhaps to gain more knowledge. You say, I'm done with that, I can look at something else perhaps. But I think you will see that we have still a lot of gaps in them, perhaps. Because I remember, it does remind me the story of Socrates. Socrates was, he was obviously a very wise person, and he heard that, the goddess of one of those islands were calling him as the wisest persons to the others. And he was like curious, how come I could be the wisest person, because I'm really ignorant. So, and then he started to ask people questions like, what is justice, what is fairness? And he realized they are equally ignorant. But then he realized what made him wise, he knew he didn't know. And he was aware of his ignorance. That knowledge of knowing his ignorance makes him to be wiser than the others. Otherwise, he says we're all equally ignorant. So I don't know, when I look at that one, somehow I feel like we all are equally ignorant of this subject. Really very complicated. Well, let's see what we'll say. Yes. I think for you it's like none. By now in life journey you learn a lot about all of them. You could say none, isn't it?
No. The more I ask, and the more I don't know.
I see. So the more, that's why actually that's really good argument. I tell my students that I say, the more you learn, the more ignorant you become. Like how I say yes. Because the more you become aware of your ignorance, then in a sense that you will never go out and say like, before maybe you thought that this is all the cup of size and you have that much, you see it's almost full, but now you realize the cup is much bigger and bigger in an ocean. Then you look at your knowledge, a droplet from an ocean. Oh, you say, I really am very ignorant. I didn't know that. So in a sense that really, so the more you learn, if that's truly true wisdom, the more you kind of feel that you are ignorant, because potential knowledge is almost infinite out there, and your knowledge is almost nothing, no matter how much it is. Yeah, so you think you know a lot, but it's not really that. So very, very good. So, but which one will say you're most ignorant of?
Myself.
Huh?
Myself. Yeah.
I see. Despite all this many years that you're dealing with yourself, you still don't know yourself.
Maybe. Because I keep asking, and when I look back, as I said just now during our conversation, the more when suddenly, to me, when suddenly I'm already sweet 70 right now.
Okay.
Sorry. So I feel that
17.
Sweet 70, not a teen.
Look, I said you look 17.
Thank you for that. So I mean, this thing, when you look back, your world is very, very short. Your life is very short. Yesterday I was a very young boy, and now I'm an old man with grandchildren and all that, children and grandchildren suddenly. So how fast it's this thing? How far will it go on? We don't know that. And what is our reality? What is the thing? What am I doing, and what am I supposed to be to myself and to the other people? That's it.
So you're still asking these questions, yeah?
Yes.
Who you are? Yes.
I think the self.
Huh? The self.
The self.
Okay. Why? You're just at the beginning of your journey, maybe for years.
Because it is one of the 3 books that we should read, and the self, the nature, the world, and the Quran, and the closest one to us, the self. I think the better we know the self, the better we can know the all other things.
Yeah, but so you think that, since the self is closest one that you always, every day, deal with the self, so why aren't you supposed to really say, I'm done, I know myself?
But I think we cannot know the self all alone, and we need to guidance, and I think we can not read the self alone.
I mean, I think from the very same logic, we are most ignorant of what we think we know the most of. So I think I know the most of myself because from the time allotted to me, I waste most of my time on trying to decipher myself and realize that I don't really know anything about myself. So I'm the most ignorant, or aware that I'm most ignorant of myself, rather than the other things.
Okay, so I think we get two candidates that relatively strong feel that we know about ourselves, right? I think Jackie, you kind of felt that you know, right? And Ryan, you also had a similar thing. We need to learn from you. Here's this question. If you know yourself, can you define, how would you define the very nature of yourself?
I was sort of saying like it's intuitive.
You know, I know, describe yourself.
That's
What is like, if I say, who are you in terms of your very nature? How would you define your very nature of yourself as a human being?
I don't think I can define it.
Why?
It's like if you ask me like, you know, how does it feel to be hot, for example?
Oh no, okay, let's make it more, you know, kind of easy for you. Do you feel you have any power?
Not really, no.
How much power you think you have it? 0 to 100. What was your scales of power you think you have it? Whether it is, again, so I'm not saying what is the source of power, I'm saying how much power you think you have it, whether you give or not, I'm not talking the power that you feel you have it. How much power do you think you have it?
0.
0. Really? So do you feel like a baby? Because babies, like, they don't have power, they can handle their things. Do you think that you're powerless like a baby?
No, well, I don't think that the power inheres in any particular individual themselves. Like we were speaking about yesterday, it's a feel or the ability that you have to do anything. This comes from Allah. So you in and of yourself, you don't really possess power in that way.
Okay. Right? How about you?
I think, I don't know if I said it right, but I think I meant was that we have access to know about the purpose and nature of what we need to know in terms of fulfilling our purpose. You know, that doesn't mean that any individual or as a group we actually are knowledgeable on that issue. But what we don't know, like the vibe and other aspects of life, that's where I think we are very ignorant of. But for example, there are some things in the realm that we don't need to know, so we don't have any knowledge on whatsoever. I'm not sure if that's making any sense. But
Yeah, but with that part, just kind of the question here is like, if I tell you in terms of your physical body, I say, can you define yourself? You say, easy. I have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and hands. You can describe it to me, right? So the question is, could you describe your non-physical part, not physical existence, in terms of, let's say, what is your true nature? What are the components of your true nature? If you think in terms of like your, let's say, spiritual body, do you know what is really, what are the elements of your spiritual body? And how do you think that really in a way that you have the power, you have certain possession, you could do something to a certain level. So in a way that God gives you certain power and then you can function and handle your life? Or do you think that you're completely powerless and you have absolute poverty along with powerlessness? What do you think?
second option, I think we're absolutely powerless. But we've been given. I don't know if you see this, but
Given? You think we have given power?
we have been given not. I don't know if you can say choice is power. Choice.
See, essentially, this is really the key part for us. So we try to really look at that. This is like the discussion is hadith or not man عرف نفسه فقد عرف ربه. So whoever knows himself knows Lord. So actually, if when you look at Nursi, perhaps I would say the most important subject is the knowledge of the self. And then Nursi will say that the self is really key to everything. Unless you know the self, you cannot know anything. Even if you think you know, he will say it's that knowledge is not a true knowledge. So he used the phrase, he says that it appears when you look something, you describe them, you say, I know this, I know this is water, I know this is tree. He will say, no, if you don't know the self, you cannot know anything, the reality of anything. Because what you know your knowledge is relational. It's not representational, which means that your knowledge is not that you, like a camera, you take the picture out there. Your knowledge of outside is how you relate to your own self, and then you build your perception based on this relation. So you relate everything to the self. So the self for you becomes called wahid qiyasi. Wahid qiyasi is basically, it becomes the means of, defining, understanding everything. So it's in this regard, really his theory of knowledge is very different. It's not really, this whole discussion like, do you really, get the essential data and have the representation of this in your mind? Or if we really look at Nursi will say, no, knowledge is relational, not representational. Or the idealists will say knowledge is projection of the mind to the reality. But Nursi will say, no, knowledge is actually, your knowledge of everything is anchored to the knowledge of the self. So if you get wrong on the self, you get wrong on everything, he will argue. So therefore, to me, the most important treatise that Nursi wrote is actually the 32 is on the ana, on the self. And ironically, he has the ana and zarra, the self and atoms in a very same treatise. The first part talks about ana, the second part talks about zarra. That's basically the atoms. And there is, I think, is a big, reason for that as well. So essentially, when we look at it, the key part is that, we mentioned yesterday, the Iqra, the very first ayah when it's revealed, read. So it's the idea here, read Iqra bismi rabbik. So when it says rabbik, it basically means read your own self and see how the Creator works within you. So then you can actually know about the Creator and know about the universe as well. So the knowledge of the self become the key for the knowledge of everything. But then the question be really, who am I? And what does it mean when I read myself? What is my true nature? So, and again, we mentioned yesterday, really, so when we really look at the secular ideology, we think, most people would think like, the problem with this secular education is about evolution, is about, let's say, atheism. No, I will say the most, let's say, I'll say the most misguided part of this ideology is the knowledge about the self. Because the mistakes start from that. Then once you really start from the very first grade and tell, misguide people about knowing themselves, then now you can misguide on everything else. So therefore the knowledge of self is absolutely essential. Now, who are you? So actually, when you read Nursi, you'll see Nursi say you are like an infant. So normally, when the kids grow up, if you tell them baby, they see an insult, right? They don't want to be baby, right? But it's actually Nursi explicitly says that you're like a little infant in the universe. So and that's in a true sense. He doesn't really mean like an analogy, because he says if you truly understand your reality, so you're like baby. Why? Because it says describe what baby is. So in terms of your power, so a baby, a crying baby, is basically a baby who has no power and has a lot of needs and wants, and crying for help. So Nursi argues that this is exactly your nature. You have no power. And so if you truly understand your possession, your powerlessness, that you will cry for help from the one who could help you. And when you look around, it says that everyone are babies like you, everyone powerless like you. So which means that you need Creator. You can only get help from Him, and you can only sustain your life with His help. So how, this is of course an argument, how could you prove that? Now a baby, you say, why you call a baby? A baby is the one who cannot even feed himself or herself. I question, could you feed yourself actually? Can anyone feed themselves? Can anyone feed, do you think you can feed yourself? In reality, no. How? Because feeding is not just, you know, swallowing food. Feeding is to get food to the stomach, to break it down into the pieces, to load them to the cells and send to the right places. And that is this digestive system. The way it works, it is extremely complicated system. And you have no knowledge of it, and you have no control over it. So in this regard, if you really look at it, the feeding, the way I look at it, when we say you're feeding yourself, is like thinking you have 70 trillion little guys that call cells working in your body. They are hungry. They have a special dietary restriction. Like the eyes will say, I cannot handle calcium. Don't send me calcium. You're going to turn me to the bones. You're going to kill me. So you have to, the bones will say, I can't do it without calcium. So you have to find the source of calcium. You have to get that food. You have to break it down, and you have to send it to the right place. The guy, like I think 2 decades ago, who study how this food distribution is happening in stomach, and he find out that when the foods break it down, and they are all attached like a zip code of where it's supposed to go, there's information attached to them, and you go to the right place, he got Nobel Prize because of that. He's not controlling, he did not establish this, he just discovered that. But since it's very complicated, they actually gave him the Nobel Prize because of that. So it basically means this digesting, eating is extremely complicated process. And there is no single human being who could claim that they have a control over their digestive system. There is no single human being. They might, those who really spend their whole life might know how it works to a certain extent, but even if they know, they don't know how to control that. Which basically means that in reality, eating is the essential thing you have to do every day, but you cannot feed yourself. So if you cannot feed yourself, who is feeding you? Who is getting this food to your cells? So you need it every day. So Nursi will say, you have to reflect on your true nature and understand your impotence. And therefore, the phrase he used, he didn't say you have some power. He says you have absolutely zero power, called ajz mutlaq. So ajz mutlaq is one of the key phrases that Nursi used very carefully, which basically means that, you have absolutely no power. It is God's power working within you. So when I drink water and I say Bismillah, it's basically, I'm reminding myself the reality that I can't really drink myself. I cannot lift it up. I don't have power. I'm actually, reminding myself it is Allah directly with His power and mercy is making me to drink and making me to digest what I drink. Okay, so in this case, the phrase that we have it's not a kind of, let's say, ritual to imitate the Prophet, that when we say Bismillah, is out there for reason to remind us the very essence of understanding of the reality of ourselves. Okay, so in this regard, so Nursi will say, if you don't understand your ajz, then your greatest mistake starts with that. Remember yesterday when we talked about the Surah Al-Alaq, it says, what was it? So verily human beings are taghi, they are rebellious. Why? And ra'ahu astaghna, because they see they are self-sufficient. They think, I can feed myself, I'm healthy, I can actually handle my worldly things. When do you need God? Sometimes they say this, it's very, very, very secular. They say, when they struggle in their life, couldn't find solution with so-called their power, they say, no one can help you other than God now. As if in other time they could help themselves. In Turkish they say, "İşin Allah'a kalmış," right? Which means that now it's all only God can do it for you. As if in other time you could do it, it was you, but now you need God. So God is just the God of emergency. It's like when you have faced emergency that you say, actually, God of Quran is God of everything. You have to call for help for everything that you want to do, because you're absolutely paralyzed. Means you have no power to do anything whatsoever. So when you start talking, you have to invoke His name, Bismillah. When you start to walk, you have to invoke His name. When you start your car, you have to invoke His name. When you start to drink, you have to invoke His name. So invoking His name is actually remembering the reality that you are powerless. That is His power coming and helping you. No one, when sometimes an atheist will say, what do you get when you believe in God? Does He really help you? Of course, we get everything from Him. It's not really because, it's not that, because the very understanding telling us you don't have any power. It's not like, yeah, God really sometimes helped me. Yeah, it helped me other day. I was like just, at the bus station. I missed the bus and suddenly someone come and, and offer help. No, it's not that. God is actually helping every moment, every time, for everything. And walking. Can you walk? A baby, we define a baby as the one who cannot walk, right? But actually, if you really look at the complex process of walking in the human body, particularly, remember, human is the only, species that can walk on the two feet, right? So, and it's very, very complicated one. And you cannot, there's no one could claim that, I can make my body walk. And how does it work? So in this case, basically, we are no different than babies. So when I look at the Prophet Ibrahim in the Quran, it's amazing how he says and how he describes his own reality. And if you look at it, he says that, I will not worship anyone but the one who does these things for me. What is that? He says, my creator, I worship the one, الَّذِي خَلَقَنِي فَهُوَ يَهْدِينِ. He's the one who created me, and He's the one who guides me. Then, وَالَّذِي هُوَ يُطْعِمُنِي وَيَسْقِينِ. He's the one who actually feeds me when I'm hungry, and who is the one that gives me water when I'm thirsty. And then, وَإِذَا مَرِضْتُ فَهُوَ يَشْفِينِ. Whenever I get sick, He's the one that gives me the shifa, give me the healing. وَالَّذِي يُمِيتُنِي ثُمَّ يُحْيِينِ. He's the one who's going to actually make me die, and also is going to resurrect me. That's my God. That's the one I am going to worship. That. So you can see here is essentially, what He's emphasizing. He's emphasizing your very, understanding of very nature as a human to be impotent to the level that you cannot feed yourself. You cannot actually cleanse. So, but have such understanding, and then have God that's helping you in everything, starting from your own so-called simple daily life, has actually changed a lot of things in this regard. So therefore, again, to have this understanding of the self is very, very essential. So which means that, so the key first to understand who we are, and the answer, if you really look at Nusa say, when you look at yourself, you're supposed to see three things. You're supposed to see Ajz Mutlaq, Faqr Mutlaq, Jahl Mutlaq, which means absolute impotence, absolute poverty. You have absolutely nothing. You are absolutely poor because nothing belongs to you. And Jahl Mutlaq, you're absolutely ignorant, which means you don't have knowledge either. So then who you are, Nursi will say, I am Abu La Shay. I am the father of nothing. So in a way that, therefore, it's really, and now when you have such understanding, you can actually kill all kind of arrogance from the very foundation. So therefore, Nursi, very interestingly, he says this. He says, if you intend to be humble, that means you are arrogant. What does it mean? Why? He says, if you intend to be humble, that means you are arrogant. What does it mean?
You think you're capable of being humble yourself. You think you have the capability of being humble yourself.
Oh, well, that's a good point. But I think there's something different than that. I think that's a good point. I didn't think about that, right? That's a good point. Any other point? The why he said that when you intend to be humble, that means you are like something. your humble brother, or like those are still students, so don't really show up on that you have PhD or anything. Just be humble. No, it's just if you actually pretend to be that way, that means you're arrogant. Why? What does it mean?
I don't mean to brag, but I'm one of the most humble people that
Oh, so it means that the humility becomes the point of arrogance for you.
Yes.
Okay, but that's another good point. But I think he means something else as well. But then that's also another point. Very, very good point. Yeah. Yes.
You should just be humble.
See, so he means that if you try to be humble, that means you think you have something that you don't want to show to others, therefore you want to be humble. But when you realize you have absolutely nothing, there's no reason for you to try to act to be humble. Is your default mode is humility. Because if I'm absolutely poor, absolutely ignorant, and absolutely powerless, there's nothing I can say, let's be humble, because I have nothing to claim that I'm better than, right? It's not like, I have a PhD and it's mine and therefore better, or it's not because my skin of my color is different than you, or it's because of, let's say, my religion better than you. So you don't claim anything. As a human, or anything you have it is blessing, it's not yours. So you can only be thankful for that. But you cannot claim the ownership, and in this case, somehow be, arrogant for that, or claim you're better than others because of that. So that part is really, so you can see, so when I look at it, because when I thought about this racism in humanity, I think the greatest disease ever inflicted on human being from the very beginning, I will say, is racism. But all kind of racism in a way that, I'm better than you because of the color of skin, or because of my religion, or because of my wealth, or because of my position. I say all of them are just a form of racism. And in Arabic they call it unsuriya. So this unsuriya is essentially the most, I will say, common disease from the day one for all humanity. I feel a lot about that, can we ever really wipe out this disease from the humanity? To me, it's almost impossible unless you get this understanding and give up and realize that you have absolutely nothing that you own. Because if I have something, if I think it's mine, then I'll start to think I might be better than you. Therefore, look, I work very hard and I deserve that one, so I have the right to claim credit for that. So therefore, there should be some differences between us. So essentially, that's what's really, when you look at it, all kind of racism comes from this understanding you have something that makes you to be better than others. But once you realize you have absolutely nothing, there's no room for racism. There's no room to say I'm better than you. So you can only be thankful if you have been granted something, but you cannot be proud of that as if it's yours. Okay. So now then, how can this understanding of knowledge of the self can help us to understand the others, the everything? Okay. So then we're going to look at what I call it. I say no-seeing approach is really Ana-based epistemology. So Ana-based epistemology means that his way is really, in his understanding, the knowledge is based on the knowledge of the self. So you know the self, and from the self you refer everything to what I call, in a way that relate everything to the knowledge of the self, and you understand everything else. So knowledge, therefore, I call it's a relational. Now, there are essentially, historically, two common movements, one rationalism, one empiricism. Okay? So rationalism will say that everything is a reflection of what you have in the mind. So the knowledge is a knowledge of the mind reflected on that. So that's the rationalist will say. Empiricist is just saying an opposite. Say that everything is the knowledge of the experience that you got through the senses. So it's reflected and represented in the mind. So in other words, like you have the camera here taking the picture, and you have the computer here sorting the data, and you build up your understanding based on that. Now, the third one is relatively new. Not that new actually, phenomenology. I think this is like almost 100 years still, but it's not that really dominant. Most people never heard about it until 5-6 years ago. I never had really heard about it. But then in the last few years, most of my reading is in phenomenology when I discovered that. So phenomenology is basically saying learning is all based on the self. So phenomenologists put the self at the center in gaining knowledge. So, and they think that everything is based on that. Now, they get it. The problem with that, they really get it well in terms of putting the self at the center, but they did not understand the true nature of self. I think therefore they get it wrong. They think the self has its own power and it's all the self, and therefore to me, they could not really go further from that to the God. Okay, so because they thought what they see in the self is from the self. So again, this is empiricism versus rationalism, or realism versus idealism. So empiricism says that it's basically what you have in your mind. It is the the knowledge of the objects out there that you see and you make sense of it, or take the picture through your senses. Okay, and rationalists would say the knowledge is knowledge of the subject as you as the knower, that basically have certain thinking and you projecting into the reality. So that's idealists will say that those big fight between the two until Immanuel Kant tried to really find some compromise between them and dividing the knowledge as a prior and posterior knowledge. So in a sense, let's say there's some knowledge is knowledge of the self and some is knowledge is basically through the experience. But phenomenologists will actually reject both. Give us, I will say, way better way to rebuild the knowledge. I see this is one of the essential problems when it comes to the knowledge, human knowledge, because the dominant one is essentially now in science is all empiricism. It's all based on experimentation and observation. As if this is the only way to gain a knowledge. That's the problem. So in this case, that those science really work very well. It's one of the things we try to do, it's to really make sure that we understand how what's the scientific methodology, and we try to use it to understand the physical world. It's really worked very well. If you want to know, something about the water, so you can go and do observation, experimentation, and understand what is that. But remember, yesterday we discussed, so you need to know the limits of what you can gain through that. If you want to describe what is that, science can be excellent tool for observation. But if you want to really know the true nature of the reality, the science has to stop there. With its current methodology, it can't really take you that to the true nature of reality. So I would say Nursi, in my reading, Nursi's epistemology is based on Ana. I call it Ana-based epistemology. So basically, it's in the Quran, the Surah Al-Rum, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَأَجَلٍ مُسَمًّى. So it says, do they not contemplate within themselves? أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, which means, says, don't you reflect on yourself, on your experience? Then it says that مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَبَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. Then it talks about the creation outside, which this is, to me, it's very clear. It says that you have to start with the reflection on yourself. So if you reflect on it, don't you know from your own experience? Don't you have the understanding from your experiential knowledge that what does it take to build a building? What does it take to cook a food? Don't you look around and then look at who is the builder of this universe? Don't you look around and see who is the cook of, the chef of cooking all this, vegetable and fruit for you? Don't you know from your experience that there must be someone with the knowledge, with the consciousness, with the power who could do that? So in this case, you see the starting point is the experiential knowledge. The starting point is the knowledge of the self. Then it says that, use this one and reflect it accordingly. The other one it says that سَنُورِهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي آفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. So we will show our sign in afaq means in an external world, and anfus, internal world, حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكفي بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. So we're going to show you all the sign within you and outside you until everything become crystal clear, that you reach the certainty that indeed this is God, that He is really working everywhere. But the key part here is saying that we're going to show you within you and outside you. So the essential, when you really look at it with the other eye, you have to read what is reflected within you, how God works within you, then you can actually see how God works outside you as well in the universe. Okay? So, and in this regard, actually, what I put it, the knowledge, because there are a lot of discussion, how do you know, and how can you be sure about what do you know? That yaqeen is one of the essential concepts among Muslim scholars as well. They discuss this. So how can you reach yaqeen, certainty of your knowledge? How can you be sure about what you know? And particularly, you read like Descartes and the skepticism, that you can see is all about how can you be sure what you actually think you know. So I put it in 3 ways. Basically, I just linked to the common law ones, and this Muslim scholar will say ilm al-yaqeen, ayn al-yaqeen, haqq al-yaqeen. So what I put it, the rationalism is kind of can take you to the ilm al-yaqeen, okay? And then I put the empiricism can actually help you to reach to the ayn al-yaqeen. But then I put it, the experiential knowledge can really help you to reach the haqq al-yaqeen. So in a sense that basically the experiential knowledge give you the absolute certainty. So in other words, sometimes I say, who do you trust most? Who do you think that give you absolutely, a very certain knowledge? Who do you think you trust most?
Yourself.
You trust yourself. So if you have experience and actually put your finger in a fire, that's all. You know the fire is actually burning. And this is interesting when you observe the kids. I don't know whether I was really curious whether there's any single baby, any single human being in the world who never experienced the fire and understand the fire is burning and stay away from the fire. No matter how protective you are as a parent, you will say, don't approach it. And they will still have to experience themselves. In a way, they will say, I don't believe in what you say. But as soon as they touch it and experience the fire, then they stay away. It's like, boom, then they go away from that. But they don't really do that. They don't do it with you, what you say that. Why? It seems like you're not absolutely certain until you individual personal experience. And therefore, I put the experiential knowledge is the knowledge that you know with certainty. And ana-based is basically establishing your knowledge based on the experiential knowledge. So, phenomenology is all about that. This is one of the examples I really use it, and I find it very helpful. Let's say you have headache. Okay, let's say I tell you I really, let's say I tell you I really have headache. And now you might look and say, you don't have headache, okay, fine. But let's say I still believe I have headache. Then I go to the doctors, do all kind of the tests, and get all the best, physician check, my brain and my, health. And they tell me that the result is you're absolutely healthy. There's nothing wrong with you. Now, will I still believe that I have headache, or will I say, no, I really don't have headache? Will I believe in the test result and the words of the physician, or will I believe in myself that I have headache?
Yes.
Why?
Your experience.
Because I know I have headache intuitively, directly. I will never care that who you are and what are the evidence you have. They all are absolutely, useless compared to what I know directly through my experience. Because I just have headache, that's all. How do you know? I experience directly. So, but whether you have empirical evidence, whether you have observational evidence, that's a secondary thing to me. So to me, the primary thing is that I do have a headache now, and I do experience that. I might lie, obviously. If I lie, I know I'm lying to myself. But you cannot convince me and tell me if I experience the headache and say, look, we did all kind of study that you don't really have headache. So in that case, basically phenomenology is taking this experiential knowledge. They call it intuitive evidence. So intuitive evidence, I find it's very, very, very, helpful and interesting concept. So the idea here is that evidence is not just empirical evidence. And actually, I see most of the time when Nursi refer to evidence is mostly intuitive evidence. So the evidence that you know from your own experience. So therefore, I remember Colin Turner, for instance, that I think he's not going to be with you, but he will be with other sections. So when he does have discussion on the evidence in Risale in his, we call Blue Book, I don't know what's Revealed Quran, I think. Revealed Quran. So in that book, he has the discussion that saying that, really Nursi's evidence is not the scientific evidence that he somehow kind of speak apologetically. I actually strongly disagree with that part because his assessment there is very much based on empirical, experimental type of evidence, as if that's the only type of evidence. And actually, Nursi's evidence fits very well in terms of intuitive evidence. And intuitive evidence for phenomenologists is even more valuable than experimental and observational evidence. As I mentioned, if I intuitively know I have a headache, finished. That's actually for me is much more convincing and certain than the test result shows that I have a headache. Okay? So in this case, that most of when you read Nursi, he will explicitly say the proof, and sometimes you look at what's that? In science, I don't read such proof. So then you kind of in a silence say, this guy is not aware of really what does proof mean. Was he really ignorant of scientific, discourse? But I think he's saying that literally, that because he has also the discussion of syllogism in that he argues that the way that he proved it is much stronger than the syllogism through the tamsil that goes through the wahid qiyasi, through the ana. Because syllogism, as you know, in basic logic, the idea of, let's say, all human is mortal, and Socrates is human, therefore Socrates is mortal. So that's supposed to be his absolute certain way of reasoning to really conclude that no one can falsify that. Nursi argues that even if you say this, you cannot make people to really believe in their mortality. So though logically they're going to accept it, that's yes, we're mortal, but actually they really don't get the point. You think they get it, but they really don't think they are mortal, which means that they are not sure, even though the statement logically is absolutely certain statement. But Nursi says, I'm going to use the tamsil, and I'm going to actually relate to their own self. I'm going to actually prove it to intuitive evidence to the level that they can become absolutely more certain than even the syllogism in which that they can reach a certainty and not sure about this. That kind of thing.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sometimes we are experiencing partially knowledge sometimes. For example, just a blind person, you take him and use it as this like elephant. He just touched and he said it is only like this, and someone touched his leg and he said the elephant is only leg. So actually he is experiencing. So what we can say about this?
I see. Yeah. So you're saying that, yeah, but so the key part here is that what you experience is true, but the mistakes you have it when you try to conclude from this experience, then try to get the full picture, you get it wrong. Remember that? So you still touch a certain part of the elephant, and from that touching, you describe based on that one. Your description of that part is not wrong, but your conclusion of your induction from that is wrong. See, that's the problem. So in this case, so in other words, you don't see the whole picture, and therefore your inferences from the limited experience lead you to the wrong places. So what is the solution? The solution is that try to understand your limitation. If it is you gonna reach the knowledge, try to compare with others and put all the experience together to get the full picture. So in other words, if you say, my way of seeing that object is the best way, there's no other way, then you're gonna only have the partial understanding of the elephant and you cannot see the full picture. But if you have 10 people, they touch different part of the elephant, and then you say, look, we are all limited because none of us see the full elephant. Let's try to discuss and to get the full picture of elephant, then you're very likely to get the accurate one. Or you have to have someone who can see the elephant, they see the whole elephant and can tell you that. Which basically means that as a human being, you can, your knowledge is always partial. But you can help each other to somehow get better and better. But your true knowledge of the reality is the knowledge of the one who sees the full picture, which is the revealed knowledge. So, and that's the reason that you have to always, in a way, that put the revealed knowledge above the human knowledge. Because human knowledge is basically, experiential knowledge is based on what you really experience, it's a limit. But the knowledge, the revealed knowledge, is knowledge of everything encompassing, can give you better guidance, I think. But still, I don't see, that shortcoming is coming because of the experience. It's coming because of your conclusion, the way that you think you can reach the knowledge. Okay? Yes.
Can I just ask a boring footnote question?
Yeah.
Have you read Sokolowski in phenomenology?
No, I didn't.
Okay. He's very clear. He was one of my teachers. Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. So, anything wrong I said so far about phenomenology?
Oh, no. I was just wondering who you had
read. I basically, mine is Husserl's first one, and Heidegger, of course, with ontology particularly.
Okay.
But many others.
So you're reading the primary ones?
Yes, exactly. Mainly Husserl's, and then, and I also read some, Monty Perlo as well, I just looked at body and experience as well. But then I read a lot of others' discussion on that one, so phenomenology, so again, that's what phenomenology is really, the key question is that you try to understand the experience. So what is it like to have a headache? Okay, you describe that, and I describe that, and everyone describes it, and then we try to find the common elements. Phenomenology will say that the commonality in human experience is absolutely valid and perhaps the most valid source of knowledge. So in other words, how do we know? How can we define headaches? We can define headache by asking every individual and then finding the common elements of this human experience and then say, yes, this is what the headache looks like, okay? And this is what is the headache. So phenomenology will say that don't go based on observation experimentation only. Perhaps the best way for you to get knowledge, go to the human experience and try to have people to really go deep into their own experience. And then get those, compare them and find the commonality. And that universal side, they will say this is the knowledge that is very universal and very true, at least for human beings. So therefore you should do that. So in a way, again, let's say, once you know this way, so how would you know God? Okay, so let's say you look at a rose. So when you look at the rose, what does the rose mean? What does a flower mean? It's basically like use this one, let's say when you visit someone, show your love for them and care for them, you take flower, you give flower to them, right? So if that is the case, then now what does the creation of flower mean? Oh, the creation of flower itself is also an expression of love for you. That means that actually the one who creates you, who also created these flowers, showing his love and care for you. So when you go and get this one and give it to the people, you think it represents your love and care for them. But then why don't you think that you want to create this that also show love and care for you? So again, you can read everything and see what is the message there. We're going to look at the examples through that. Yeah, so we will come to the example. I think there are some, let's see, we have 30 minutes to 35 minutes. Let me see, because I have some example of the self before, maybe the worldview. I could go there. Okay, so I think let me go. We can go fast on that because I want to go to the example of the self, how you could do through that. So essentially, so we try to see how now you build your own view of the reality once you know the self. What is your view of the world? Then we call it this world view, that through which you can look at the reality. So in that case, our concept here basically that you start to build you have this we call the world view, that I call it this like basically is a set of belief and perception that shape how a person understands and interact with the world around them. It's like a lens through which a person view life. So in this case, so I call it sometimes like operating system in your mind, or it's the lenses, glasses with which you can look at it. So if we recall our discussion yesterday in terms of the problem, so the problem is actually that you have this virtual reality glasses, that the VR glasses, they show you the secular perspective. Now the solution that Nursi suggests is that change your glasses, change your lenses. Have the lenses based on the Tawheed. That is the Harfi perspective. The Tawheedi lens is going to actually show you the Harfi and its 3 dimension and have you to understand the reality. But you have to start this from the self first, because the self is the one that's basically determining what is really your worldview. And we have to start to have the proper understanding of the self, and you build your views based on the proper understanding of the self. So in this case, your knowledge of the world is built based on the knowledge of the self. So knowing the self is the key to all other things. So what we call it, basically, we argue the secular worldview is a 4D, is based on 4D, 4-dimensional reality. It's a 3-dimension of space plus 1 dimension of time. So basically, in a secular way, there's nothing, no reality beyond the 4-dimension. So everything's physical, materialist, plus there's something called time, that you bring those, they become 4-dimension. So in this case, the secular worldview, the problem starts with the self and the misunderstanding of the self and the teaching of the secular language based on the misunderstanding of the self. Then the existence is defined as if there's a 4-dimensional reality, is a materialistic and 4-dimensional in a secular. Then the knowledge is very much divided knowledge. You have the knowledge of subjective one and objective ones and knowledge. So there is no unity between them. So it's a divided knowledge. The purpose or the telos is all worldly. The objective is to really have the worldly paradise. So there is no need to really wait that you're going to go to paradise. That was like deception. Give up then and try to really establish your paradise on this world. And the human nature is very much driven by self-interest. So your whole objective is to really just do what is best for you. And good and bad, this is very self-centric and subjective. There is no universal, objective type of good and bad. It's all relative. As we know, relativism culture is all based on that. So this is really, when you look at it, it's kind of 6 pillars of the secular worldview. But at the center is the self, and the misunderstanding of the self becomes basically the source of all other misunderstanding as well. Therefore, I put the self at the center and all others based on the self. Now, Tawheed put God at the center of everything. And the God is basically revealing himself through his words, that is the Quran, and through his works, that is the universe. So in a sense, there are 2 Quran. One is Quran Kareem, and one is Quran Kabir, that's the universe. So essentially, the God is revealing himself through the Quran and revealing himself through the universe. you as a human are supposed to really read both books, but you have to start to read yourself first. You read and realize, and as you read the self, if you look at here, we put it, the self is zero power, zero property. So you're absolutely, you know, if you look at here underneath of the, look at here, this one. You read yourself, you have no power, you have no possession. Okay? And then you look at the universe, you see there is infinite power, infinite mercy reflected in the universe. What is the soul? Then basically that's how you realize, okay, I don't have any power. How come the rock or the tree can have a power? I cannot feed myself. How come the tree can make a fruit for me? So your knowledge of self will take you to the source of what is in the universe as well. So as you read and realize, and what you do, you submit and appreciate. So, and you bear witness, submit and appreciate. That's what it means to become a believer. And in this case, that once you do that, basically, that will shape your character. That will shape you as a human being, as a believer. Humility, honesty, thankfulness, peacefulness, caring, sharing, praying, that's become part of you. So the whole purpose to really, in this case, to read them and to become better and better as a human being in this case. So the Tawhidi worldview in this regard, we call it the 5-dimensional. Why? Because there is a space, 3-dimension, time, 4-dimension, but there's also the 5th dimension, the Malakut dimension. So you go beyond the physical dimension, you bring the metaphysical dimension directly into the reality. So you don't look at the reality just a materialist way and physical way. So you include the Malakut dimension into the picture. So in this regard, the Tawhidi worldview starts with the understanding of the self in a proper way, who you are, true nature of that. And then you look at the existence in terms of the 5-dimensional reality, both physical and metaphysical. And then you look at the knowledge in an integrated way. So there's no knowledge separated. So everything's knowledge of physics, chemistry, biology, religion, they all has to be same because everything ultimately comes from the same source. So it can't be separated. And the purpose is a dual paradise. To have a paradise in this world and the hereafter. It's not like, suffer here, you're going to go to the no. Nursi's argument here, your paradise starts in this world. If you live a good life, you're going to experience a paradise type of life in this world. If you live a bad life, you're going to enter the hellfire in this world before going to the actual one. So therefore, there is a dual thing. It's not really one. And the human nature is not one self, it's a multiple selves. And then good and bad, it is completely God-centric definition. What's really good? Whatever God makes it good is good. Whatever He says is bad for you. That's all. It's not like my mind is a guide and I'm going to define that. So it's very God-centric. It's all about the virtue. It's not self-interest. And actually, the Quran will say, Quran promotes the selflessness. Isar is one of the key things that is encouraged in the Quran.
Could you explain the human nature multiple selves?
You know, we spent the whole lectures on that one already because knowing the self is we have like 2-3 hours lectures only on that one. We define 7 elements of human nature. We call it the king, the wazir, the judge, the elephant, the showman, the dog, and the driver. So the king is heart, the wazir is mind, the judge is the wijdan, the elephant is nafs, the dog is the ghadabiyya, and the showman is the ego, ananiya. So we define this, but we spend the whole day, we have a whole session on that. We did we did it even 2 days with other groups. I think it was off the bat. Because, knowing the self in terms of the multiple elements, it's truly, truly essential. Because if you're going to raise kids, have education, you need to know them better. So therefore, when Lucy refers to those, let's say, kids, when he saw them, he remembers, when he was in prison, saw the girls and dancing, and he did not blame them. He cried for what they were doing. The reason he cried because he knew the human nature. He knew that they are actually being enslaved by their nafs because of the culture. So therefore, he never blamed them. He used very compassionate, caring adjective to defining the youth of this time. He says that they are almost, their free will is almost taken away from them. Why? Because the culture is kind of imposing on them to live a kind of hedonistic, animalistic type of life. So, and therefore, he says, look, have pity on them. And that's why he was crying for them, because his understanding of human nature. So it's very, very essential to this. But again, there's this whole...
Where does he talk about that?
I did, like, in 2012, I published articles on that one. Actually, it's one of the most cited articles in things I call Grand Theory of Human Nature and Happiness. So based on this is essentially from Moses' 23rd word. But I expand on that one. I got something from that and expand on this. And it's very interesting. It's really, a lot of people like it a lot. This is one of the most cited articles. It seems like they find it very helpful to really, in terms of understanding the human nature. But it's a whole session. So again, the Tawhidi worldview should be based on the self, and then again, in terms of your understanding of existence, epistemology, teleology, anthropology, axiology, all should be component of that, okay? But the self will be phenomenology, obviously, the understanding of self, but I call it Tawhidi phenomenology, not the secular one, and as the Husserls and others will claim for that. So in this case, God is at the center of everything. God is center of nature, center of society, center of history, center of your personal life. So it's essential to establish this connection. And remember, our argument was that the problem is separation of creator from creation. So how are we going to reconnect them? That's really our objective in this case. So, and we says that basically the two dimensions of existence is a mulk and malakut dimension. So remember, we bring the fifth dimension that we call the malakut dimension. Now, I translate as a metaphysical, but I think I'm convinced to change it to angelic dimension, because this is about angels, it seems like. So therefore, metaphysical is very loaded philosophically concept. So I think I'm going to most likely change the concept and go to angelic one, because to me, malakut is about malakut actually is mentioned in the Quran, but it's really essential to bring the angels into the understanding as well. Because normally we have, believing in angels is one of the pillars of the faith, but we don't truly understand why it's there other than, angels is good, they're here, they're recording the things, they brought the revelation to the prophet. But do they do anything else? Oh, they sometimes come with the dropping of rain, because the hadith says that. But we don't really incorporate into our understanding of reality. I find out the room is there that when we look at the malakut dimension, that we can define based on the angels there. So then actually I start to more recently change the translation as angelic dimension, not, metaphysical one. So in this case, when you look at the causes, there are two different causes. The apparent cause, that's in the mulk dimension. The real cause, that's happening in malakut dimension. So in that case, whenever we really look at it, there's only, ultimate cause is the malakut dimension. And the creation, there are two types of creation, ibda and insha. So ibda is creating from nothingness. Insha is creating by the arrangement of existing one, okay? Assembling. So, or Nursi says murakkabat. So tarkib, that in Arabic word that you put them together. But what I find out, basically, this is what I see how we can establish between creator and creation. Remember we said the problem is that now we separate them. So the connection has to be through the creation. Therefore, Quran says, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Khalaq means creation. He is the one who creates. So in that case, I see that we have to establish connection in terms of the creation. What are the creation? Or there are two types of creation, ibda and insha. But I used to think that ibda and insha are separate. But when I read Nursi carefully, I came to the understanding there is only ibda. Insha, there is no insha without ibda.
It's apparently insha.
There is insha, apparently insha, but insha always built up on ibda. So in other words, what is this water? Oh, it's composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Oh, that looks insha. But actually that hydrogen and oxygen that was there used to make water is being created and created and created every moment. Oh, which means ibda. So in this case, that means when I get this cup of water, oh, this is newly created water. It wasn't the water they brought it here. This is the water not even a minute ago. This is every minute is being renewed water. So which means that every time I drink a water, I can say this is water now is created. And I'm actually, I am being blessed directly and given directly a water from the Creator as a gift. So in this case, there's a direct connection between everything and the Creator. So, and again, you can see basically, Ibda, I link directly to the Malakut dimension, and Insha, therefore I color it in this way, is happening in Mulk dimension, okay? But basically, since behind the Ibda, there is, behind Insha, there is Ibda, so every time you see anything that's Insha, it also has to be with Ibda. Now with that also, our understanding of causation will change. So in this case, Creator, God, is not the first cause, as they discussed in philosophy. He is the only cause. Okay? So in this case, basically, there are two different causes. One is the real and direct cause. One is the, let's say, indirect and apparent cause. Okay? So in this case, the indirect and apparent cause happening in a Mulk dimension, but the direct and real cause is in the Malakut dimension. So that you see here, I changed it as angelic dimension, right? The other one, I call it the metaphysical. I said like more recently, I started to look at that and define it as an angelic dimension. So remember, science is all about causation. Science is all about understanding what is the cause. Now, if I'm going to really tell the kids that what is the cause of water, can I tell it without God? Not at all. I can't. I cannot say that, this is a physics class, this is a biology class, there's no room for God. No, it's if I once I understand that God is the source of everything, and everything is a form of creation, then in this case I have to, and He is the cause of everything, and He's the only cause of everything. And if you want them to understand anything, I have to go through Creator. I have to bring God into the class and to explain to them based on that.
Would it be true if in secular science classes they said instead of like this causes this is associated with this?
But yeah, as you say,
like they still don't want to say creation, and they can't fill the void in between the cause.
Yeah, that's why I say when you say association, I would say you say this is the apparent cause, which means that you say, if I say how do we get water? If you say it appeared that we get water when the hydrogen and oxygen come together, but it doesn't come from them. It's if you say it is created with this apparent cause, I will be fine. But if you say it comes out of them, I will not be fine.
Yeah.
That you're misleading them. Because the problem here is that when you explain and give this apparent cause, you actually leave no cause for people to be thankful. If this is not coming from God, then in this case, I don't have to think about God. Why? Because, but if I, again, let's say this building, we've been here living in this building. Did any one of you really wonder who built this building? Did any one of you feel that you need to go and thank to the person who built this building for you? Did anyone do that? Did you even think about it? No, but do you logically accept there must be someone who built this building?
Yes.
Okay, but why don't you think you should be thankful for that? Because you think, the best person built and get his fee gone, you just enjoy it now, right? But think in this way. Imagine this building is not stable, and the building is actually being destroyed every minute and it has to be rebuilt, and someone is rebuilding every minute without even bothering you when you're leaving that. What would you do? Don't you think that you feel a normal thanks to this person who said, look, building is being rebuilt every minute. Who is this one building and not even bothering us from building that? So this is dynamic creation, actually. The whole universe is being like this. It's not like created first time and you're just sitting enjoying and we think, oh, who was the one builder? No, there's no was, is, who is the one building right now? Who is the one creating this water for me now? Who is the one giving me this water? Because the water here disappears suddenly. It doesn't have a stable nature. It goes to nothingness right away, actually. If we go to quantum physics, it appear and disappear. Who is the one bringing it back again? And as to take to my mouth, it goes again to the disappear again, and then he recreated. Who is the one bringing him back again and again and again? Look, when you see this constant creation, you have every reason for appreciation. So therefore, I say it's essential to really bring the creation. When you talk about the universe, then you bring the creation linked to the creator. That's actually linked to the appreciation. But if you don't see that, you don't really appreciate all the things you say. Once upon a time, he set the whole systems, and we need to be thankful for that. So, like example, honey and honeybees. Now, how would you look at that through this, Tawhidi perspective? How would you look at this? What would you say? If you look at through the Ma'nai Harfi, what would you say? See, this is test exam questions after all these lectures, right? What would you say if you look at honey and honeybees? What is the Harfi perspective to read honey and honeybees? Yes. See how many people can pass the exam.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you seems like used to multiple choice questions. Okay, give me multiple choice. Okay, A. Obviously, honey bees just emerge out of evolution and take this form, and that's why So the A, let's say the secular one. I assume you will know that's wrong. The B, honey bee is an amazing creation of God. Work like it's literally honey-making machine created by God, and honeybees makes honey for us with God-given ability. That's B. Is it true or not?
Yes.
True? From Harfi perspective.
Yes.
How many will say true? Yes. How many will say true for the B? The option B? Edmund? Was it true? One say option B was like honeybee is God made a honey factory or honey machine which produce honey. From Tawhid perspective, is this true or not?
Yeah, those are the choices.
True?
Yes.
Okay. Shakir, is true or not? No. Huh? No? Oh, okay. Anyone else who say no? No?
I mean, it's missing a partial point that, this shows that our Creator is Kareem and cares about us and feeds us and gives us nutrients.
No, the question is, do you think that the honey bees is created as a machine by God that produce honey for us? If you say that, is it true or false? From Harfi perspective, from Tawhidi perspective.
Not created once, but is being created all the time.
Okay, is being created all the time as a machine and producing honey. Is it true?
Yes.
Yeah. See, I think you all failed in the exam except 2 people since that. It's all wrong. Absolutely.
Why?
Why? Because then you give the honey making to the bees. The bee has no power to make honey.
But we said every time.
No, still. How about does honey come from honeybees or comes with honeybees?
Comes from.
See? So honey does not come from honeybees. Honey comes from where? Divine power and mercy. We directly create them.
Yeah.
So honeybees, what is the honeybees? No, what is the honeybees? Oh, honeybees is this. This is AI actually. I asked the AI to draw the honeybees. That's the AI put it. Honeybees is actually, really, this is AI drawing from honeybee is just the honey delivery guy. It's just deliver honey to you. It does not make honey for you. It's not a factory. It's just the delivery means. Actually, if you read Nursi, from the very first word, he will give this message. What he will say? He will say that you say the cows and sheep, they are not the milk producing, they are actually a faucet of delivering milk. So it has he will say the tree are not the source of food, they are actually the servant. He will say as a service. So like, again, that was milk and cows. Does God create cows and give a milk? No. God create cow and God create milk. But God sent the milk through cow. So God is the source of milk and the source of cow directly. But God delivered milk through the cows. Okay? So in this case, milk comes through cows, but not from the cows. So that's very, very important difference to look at from their head. Apple. Is apple from apple tree? This is again AI description. Isn't it a very good one? So like a human delivering that on the top of the head. I asked AI, I said, oh, that way I want to really have a proper understanding of tree, because that's what I want the kids to really understand. Tree is like a delivery guy. They are just carrying the food to a human being, but they are not producing the food. They are not making the food. Who is making the food is God directly. So the apple seed is not the source of the apple. The apple seed is just the recipe of how to make apple tree. So in this case, that it's God directly creating apple tree and creating apple, but attaching apple always to apple tree and apple tree to the apple seed. And you seeing this association as a causation. And go and read, Edmund perhaps knows this one very well, David Hume, right? Mm-hmm. I think he is the #1 guy 300-400 years ago. He was an atheist guy, and he actually wrote it to prove that there is no God as a cause. But he did excellent job is helping us that the cause are not the cause. That what we see is just associations, not causation. And he put it that he says the cause are not qualified to be the cause. It's just when you observe something again and again, you tend to think in your mind as if one thing comes from the other. It's like when you go to the stores, like well-organized stores, you will always find the eggs in a particular shelves, the milk in particular shelves. But as a kid, imagine you don't know where they made from, then you start to think, well, the shelves is making egg, or the shelves is making milk. What a nonsense as thinking, right? Because you observe it that way. So David Hume says this is exactly what human does. When you see again and again apples attached to the apple tree, you think apple come from apple tree. So you see association as a causation. So it's essential to really break the link. The tree, when you look at the tree, what you see, the tree against the AI is actually the talking. It's telling you message. So what is telling you? It's saying that, look, it's not me giving you food. Who is giving you food? It says, so it is him, the beginning is him, my end is him, my outlook is him, my inner work is all from him. So in other words, it's actually, if you look at through the Harfi perspective, you will see that every aspect you see is God revealing himself. God revealing in the seed, God revealing himself in the fruit, God revealing himself in the design of the tree, God revealing himself through the inner working of the tree as well. So therefore, when Nursi had the tafsir of this, so it's basically, and I think it's a Surah Al-Hadid, when he made the tafsir of that awwal al-akhir wal-dhahir wal-batin, he gave the example of the tree like this, the saying the tree is talking to you as actually revealing those, reading those verses to you. Apple, again, we keep a lot of examples from Apple. So when you really look at it, you see Apple is not coming the way everything is created is very interconnected, which means Apple does not come from apple tree. Apple comes from the tree of the universe. Why? Because the entire universe somehow has to work together in the creation of Apple. Therefore, you can never create an apple. Why? Because everything is connected to everything in the universe. And actually now in quantum physics, what they call it for that the particle level disconnection, what is the phrase for that one? Any, call entanglements. So entanglements, basically they find that this connection exists at the subatomic level as well. every particle is connected to every particle in the universe. How about the taste when you eat fruit? Where the taste come from? Does it come from the fruit?
No.
When you eat apple, the taste of apple, does it come from the apple? Does it come from your brain?
No.
See? So the taste also directly comes from the Creator. But comes through the apple. And always when you eat apple, you get a particular taste. Then you start to think, oh, you know, oh, this is a red apple has this taste. But actually, the taste is not from the fruit or is not from the brain. It's directly from the Creator. So in this case, that it's that you give everything directly to the Creator. You connect everything to the Creator. So Nursi is very, very harsh on materialist. He says materialism is essentially, it's like, given those rocks like dumb, unconscious, blind matter to be the source of all these amazing things. It's like you get the piece of rock. That's why, again, AI gave it to me. You have a piece of rock. And then you say, this piece of rock is actually much more intelligent, knowledgeable than the best professor in the world. That's nonsense. And that's what Lucy said, that's what actually you try to, you have to accept when you ascribe this to the materials, when you ascribe this to the matter itself. So either you have to say, every single piece of matter is extremely knowledgeable, intelligent, and has a power, or you have to give one Creator. I remember yesterday there was a discussion on water. So what is water when you ask that? So in that case, basically, the hydrogen and oxygen come together. That is insha. But the emergent properties, that is idda. So in this case, that water cannot exist without idda. So therefore, every drop of water that we enjoy is a direct creation of God that we experience in this regard. Again, so you can link to, in terms of Ibda, Inshan, Mulk, Malakut, and explain through that very well. So the whole point here, science is really, is it good or bad?
It's good if you see it in the Harfi.
If you could use with the Harfi perspective, science becomes science, a study of the science of God. So, and therefore, the scientific knowledge could be actually used to understand, to reach the knowledge of God, to understand God. So, because it reveals something about God, so it's not bad in this regard. So, it's basically, I call it, remember they call universe? So, I find this verse in universe, I don't know whether they put this is actually, the universe is like a verse, is an ayah. So therefore, I don't know in English when they had that one, but the Quran refers everything in the universe as an ayah. Ayah means verse, as we know, basically in English. So universe is like, in a way, that the whole universe is really ayah, and the whole universe is like the Quran, that Nursi used that one. So in this case, basically, the key part, you can read the book of universe by reading yourself first. So when you read yourself, that basically, in a way, the whole universe is summarized within yourself. So therefore, you read yourself, you can understand the universe as well, because there is a very close connection. So how would you do that? So very briefly we do, and we're finished with that. So essentially, this is, let's say you read yourself, you understand the self. So then you use this experiential knowledge. You say, okay, I know how to build a Lego house. I have experience. I know I have to see, I have to have knowledge, I have the power to put the piece together. Then you look at the real house, you say, oh yeah, I understand how this real house comes into existence. That means someone who sees, someone who has a knowledge, someone who has a power, a much bigger one, build this house. Now, same thing again, you look at a piece of Lego and try to really see how those pieces of Lego come together. And you look at the universe. I saw once in Australia, they actually tried to teach kids that the universe is like, as a piece of, basically Legos that you can put them together and build it. Now then, use this knowledge, that's the experiential knowledge. you just think about the planet Earth as a palace. I say this is a giant one. And it looks like really a house, but just much bigger house and constantly flying. They now giving your knowledge of any house, whether that's a Lego house or your simple house or an elegant human palace. You compare it to the planet as a palace, you say, wow, you know what? Given my own experiential knowledge, there must be a builder for this house. And the builder must have a knowledge, must have a wisdom, must have a power, and must have a care, because I know all of those from my own experience. So basically, in this case, you use your experiential knowledge, and then you reflect on the things around you, and then you find God on that. Let's say I don't have that one, you know how to cook. I remember when I was staying in, college, we called Darsana. I remember I was learning about how to cook. They said that, if you want to make a lentil soup, what is the ratio of water and a lentil? Anyone knows that? It says, I remember they said that it's a 1 to 4. I think 1 to 4. They said that for the rice is 1 to 2. Okay?
Depending on the rice.
Yeah, that's what I know. That's what they said. I learned that way. It was my turn to cook it, and I was alone. And I started to make a rice, but I added 1 to 4. I just confused. I did not pour very much. And then I was looking, my rice is still like a soup. It's not really, the water is not going. And then after a while, a friend came and looked at it and said, how much water did you get? I said 1 to 4. So, oh, you made a mistake. Oh, then I realized that knowledge is very essential. So not only you have to know, you have to really know for each one of them, and you have to do properly. Now, if you have this experience of cooking, then you look around all this ready-made food. You say, how are they being cooked? What are the ingredients? What is the recipe for them? Oh, when you study them, then even the entire world come tell you this is just happened to be by itself, you will never accept it. If you have any experience like mine, you will never accept that one, in this case, as to be true. So in a sense, you don't have to be like a PhD to really know creator. If you know how to cook the food, you can easily go from this knowledge to the creator. My mom has no schooling whatsoever. When I sit down with my mom and talks about her experience with the chicken, with the eggs, with the, she has a little garden, a vegetable garden. She could easily from this experience go to the creator. You can see that she can be absolutely sure there must be a creator behind that. Why? Because it can't really exist in any other way around. So I think so we can end it here. Our time is up. So essentially, again, the whole point here. So what we did today is so we tried to see how you could use the Harfi perspective to know yourself and to know the existence and to understand, to build your worldview, and through which that you can look at everything and see everything. And when you look at everything, you see God everywhere. You see everything is connected to God, and you feel the presence of God. That is really what's described as an ihsan in a famous hadith. So that's really the whole, let's say, point of Nusi's efforts in a way to really help us to see in that way, to feel the presence by seeing the connection. And when he realized the modern education is completely dismissing that part, so he put all of his effort, his lifelong objective was to really have such education system. He came to Istanbul for that purpose, to convince the administration or the leadership at that time on this, but he couldn't tell them. And when he failed to convince politicians, he realized perhaps politics is not the way, and he started to write these books and establish called Darsana type of things. But I think, his dream is still half accomplished, and there are lots to be done. And I think that is, that is in a way that unfinished projects that is absolutely necessary for the entire humanity in general and for Muslims in particular. So that's what's really, we have been involved in this one, and we try to develop more applicable practical model we call 5D thinking. So today in the afternoon in Lalova, we'll show it to you what is the model and how we do that. At least when you join that one, so you will have a practical sense of really how to use this Nusian Harfi approach in integrating knowledge, inshallah. Okay, thank you very much, and inshallah we can end here and then continue in the afternoon. Okay.